Is corruption getting institutionalized as the topic for tonight's discussion? Welcome to People's Voice. I'm Dawa, and before we move on, let me introduce my panelists. I have a change in one panelist. That is, instead of Mr. Chundutsring, I have Pubzam. Thank you so much for joining us for the English session. And I have Honorable Member of Parliament from National Council, Pemalamo. I have Timpu Tompen, Mr. Kile Doji, and from the National Assembly, I have Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Duptopla. Thank you so much for being here. I think in the interest of time, let's straight away start our discussion. Also, we would like to remind all our viewers that you can call us to the numbers that we have already flashed on the bottom of your screen, and do keep the topic in mind and suggest, or if you have any questions, please direct to our panelists here. But the fact of the matter is that I would assume that we did not invite any of the panelists, assuming that you all are anti-corruption experts. But the views that you all are going to express here, would definitely send some reminders to concerned individuals and institutions. Is corruption getting institutionalized? What do you think, Pubzam? What do you think? Since you are new to this discussion, what do you think?
Thank you, Dawa, for inviting me on the show, and I think it couldn't have been at a more appropriate time, because I think most people would have just read the verdict which had come about my case, which was to do with corruption. And I think in some ways you can say it is being institutionalized, because it is, when I say institutionalized, I mean like it's not the institution, but it's the individual there who, due to their own need or their greed, that I would say, they try to rope in others, and then that's where I feel that it is getting institutionalized.
Okay. Maybe briefly, Pemalamun.
Thank you once again. I personally am not, I think, very confident to say that corruption is getting institutionalized, because I think if we look back, say a decade back, corruption was something which was never heard of in Bhutan. The word, I mean. Whereas corruption was rampant, I would guess, abuse of authority. Those days, I think there was no check and balance. People in authority could do anything that they wanted, and systems were not properly put in place. But since, I think one of our audience pointed out, since 2005, once the Anti-Corruption Commission was instituted, I think then corruption, the word itself, the nomenclature, I think everybody has caught up with it, and everybody now speaks of corruption. And the way people perceive corruption, and I think it's like everybody is corrupt in Bhutan, and corruption is so rampant. I think that is what is the perception of Bhutan today. Whereas what I feel is, I think the situation is not so. Because while there are cases of corrupt practices, I think to say that it is institutionalized, at this time I would feel is not really true. And why I say this is also, I think there are institutions in place. Like we have the Anti-Corruption Commission, we have the Royal Audit Authority, and we have many institutions which are put in place and which are working towards streamlining systems. For instance, the Anti-Corruption Commission has already done a very huge exercise in coming up with the National Anti-Corruption Strategic Framework, which has 9, elements to how to minimize corruption in the systems. And also, an exercise is, I think, being conducted again with all the government organs as well as public organizations, and that is the corruption risk management. Yes. And these are just systemic studies where the higher risk for corruption to occur, and then trying to correct, address these things. So all these things are happening. And if we really, to answer very honestly, my personal thing is, I think we have come a long way. And to say that today it is getting institutionalized, I disagree a little bit on that. I
Yes.
leave at this for
Yes.
the time being.
Mr. Kiledoji, what do you think?
Yes, once again, thank you very much. I think I would fully agree with what Madam has said, that corruption has not been institutionalized. The reason being that over the decade or over 5 years, I think corruption has really reduced, because those days I think it was much more. Though media was not very strong that time, I could feel, I could understand, I could hear that corruption was quite in a bigger quantity and volume. But today, even by international rating, we are proud that Bhutan is rated 33rd amongst 176 nations in the world, and the best in the South Asian region. So going by that, I feel that Anti-Corruption Commission and the Royal Audit have done their part, and we would definitely congratulate them for being so strong, so rigid, and going by the rules. But then again, it's time to change. We need to amend certain rules, regulations, laws, whereby that we could even reduce corruption, not completely do away with corruption. For example, the tendering process, I think it is, I would think that everybody would accept this, that tendering is a big problem today in the system. We need to go through tendering process for anything, for procurement, for award of works, for constructions and things like that. And when the rules are very rigid, even then, if people wanted to manipulate and get their interests being already met, I think it is possible, even with the rules in place. But if your conscience is clear, if your interest is to do the work, is to help the people and the nation, I think we need to change the rules and the laws that are there in place. I think if it is for the interests of the nation, and if somebody is genuinely for it, I think the Royal Audit or the ACC should look into the cases genuinely. Like example to cite would be, as I already cited this in the Dzongkha section, that when we do procurement, even in the city, I think there are flaws. Like we buy spare parts for the street lights. It's an annual business. It's an annual business. We do tender every year. And the problem is we get the cheapest thing and duplicate things.
Do you see a few people getting rich out of this tendering process?
Definitely. It is a problem. The government is losing out on this. We do tender, we give it to the lowest, and we get all fake things. And it is put there in the place. It gets burned out within 2-3 months, and we have to keep on replacing those. And in my opinion, there should be certain flexibility in the rule, or the rule should be amended such that we could form committees at our level and go and buy on the spot. There is certain levels, thresholds, but that is not enough. We need to increase those thresholds, and people should be empowered to do this, but behind that, the intention should be
Proper
clear.
accountability.
Proper accountability, and the intention should be clear.
Okay. Mr. Trutto?
Thank you, Dawa, again. Is corruption getting institutionalized is the topic of our discussion here. And definitely I would say corruption is not getting institutionalized in our country. But I will say our society is very complacent about the corruption. But doesn't mean that corruption is getting institutionalized in our country. So I think it should be made very clear to our people that it's very alarming. The moment we say, is corruption getting institutionalized? It sounds as if all our institutions are, into corruption. It sounds as if that the anti-corruption itself is also into corruption. It sounds that way to me, that very topic. Even let's say media. media has been doing a lot in curbing corruption, but media is also part of the institution. So the very moment when we say is it getting institutionalized, I think we should be very clear here. So I would say it is somehow our society is a bit complacent. We are taking it very easy on small.
So are you saying that we are taking corruption for granted?
Yes, to certain extent, but not the system. By our people, by our society, the nature of our society, the way it's because, like we said, it's our close-knit society. We are a bit, easy. We just take it for granted. We say, why should I have to, when he is going to get that, why should I bother? It's the national thing, and then
Exchequer that is going to bear the brunt.
going to pay the price, and not me. So in that way, so our mindset is becoming a bit complacent. We are very easy on it, but definitely not the institutions that is getting corrupted. So in that way, my opinion here is how long can we go on with this kind of mindset, because it's the people who are working in the system. So if the system is not allowing corruption, there is proper check and balance, of course, and then we design such a good system with good proper check and balance, and then we have transparency and also accountability. But if the people working in a system become very complacent, then we have a big challenge. So can we go on like this as our country progress, as our country goes to the next level of development? So that is the biggest challenge. And I think it is time that now we prepare ourselves. We should be more determined. So we should understand that if we are trying to adopt such kind of mindset, but at a later stage of our country, then we are going to face a very serious problem. So I think that's what we have to understand at this stage, and then we should really work hard. We all should be determined to not to take corruption as a very light issue.
Yes, thank you. I could definitely see some expression of disagreement in Ampemalama, but before that, let me take our first call. Hello, do we have a caller online? Okay, since we do not have any callers online, maybe Ampemalama, what do you think? The examples cited by Mr. Kiladoji, is it an administrative lapse, or should we consider it as a part of flaws in the system that is encouraging corruption?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, because how I see it is, I think the example that Thompen mentioned in relation to the procurement, I think the existing procurement procedures are quite flexible. And the whole purpose of having to constitute a review committee, the procurement committee, I suppose, is in fact to ensure that there's as little tampering or corruption as possible, or no corruption at all, monitoring. And with regard to the quality of the products, I also feel that the system allows to specify what type of a commodity that you want. So you ask for a commodity of good quality, but if you are getting a commodity that's of a lower quality, so is that the system or is it the individuals? So what I feel is, I think whilst, yes, I do agree totally with Thompen when he said that certain procedures need to be corrected. I think that procedures, I agree to that, but systems and procedures, personally what I feel is, how long can you go on changing a system? How long can you go on, saying that, okay, today this is what we are doing, but it is not working, so we will do it separately. Tomorrow you change, again change. Because basically what is most important is the individuals within that system, I feel. If individuals do not change, I think you change systems 100 times, there will be no change.
So not so much to do with the system, but individuals.
I definitely feel that it is more so to do with the individuals, but perhaps a systemic of the procurement, if it is really posing as a hindrance in, like a speedy administrative works, I think then it needs to be reviewed in that regard, but not to curb corruption per se. This is what I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I move on to Pubzam, I think we have a caller online now. Hello, La. Hello, La. Could you introduce yourself, La?
Yeah, this is Karma Tenzin from Finseling.
Okay, La. Mr. Kamatenzen.
Yeah, I've got a few points to be made to all the. I think we are making too much of a mountain out of a molehill where this corruption is concerned. My opinion is that we have so many relevant laws already in place, and the institutionalization of corruption is not true, but I think some institutions are getting into corrupt mode. This has to be monitored, this has to be closely watched, and then explain why certain sections are failing. Some certain institutions are not doing their duty that they are sworn to do, they are bound to do. This needs to be checked. Now, in the Dzongkha section, I heard about the Lamluk and Droluk. I think we should not be very petty about such things as Doma Khamto, and towards the end of the harvest time, we gave with the Safi. And then if I want to see some old friends, whether they are ministers or secretaries, I take a basket of oranges or apples. We shouldn't be so petty about it, because we have been practicing it throughout centuries. But only thing is, the government institutions, while awarding work, considering some factions of certain projects, this needs to be meticulously seen to from both inside, outside, and from all angles. This and the Trompen has made a very relevant point that we are penny wise and pound foolish, because he recently seemed to have completed a project, Tashidele to him, that the amount allocated was not enough for those people who bidded for it. But the project was going to take a longer time to be completed, so he made a decision. Under such decisions, the ACC or the audit have to be magnanimous, and because it is good for our town, our people, for all of us. So why should, such a small lapses, the Lamluk, the Tiluk, the Mathue section has been violated. This should be scrapped, and that should be seen to, instead of nitpicking into all this Anida Mathue law, this is not in accordance with this manual and that rules and regulation. This has also to be seen at a higher level. If it is good for the public, if it is good for the country, why should we do nitpicking and things like this? So these, I don't think we should not panic about these things. We are in good control. Only thing I request is all concerned must do a very good job of it conscientiously, and that is all we required. All that is required, and the monitoring and information networking and gathering is a must in order to curb these corruptive practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I think I would like to definitely come back to Trompen on the issue raised by Mr. Karmatenzin. But before that, maybe let's talk about procurement system. Ampubzam, you have been on the other side of the fence, and we are talking about forming committee in government institutions whenever we tender out for some projects to be carried out. On the other side of the fence, do you see problems with the government procurement system? Because we're talking about this system, not this system favoring some form of corruption.
Well, the procurement side which I am familiar with is in the construction sector, and in the construction sector there are some rules, some laws which if an individual in that institution, now that time when I said that is corruption getting institutionalized, and I said yes, I think, but when I say it's not all the institutions, it is some institutions and the individuals in those institutions who may have a vested interest. Now they take the advantage of getting committees to actually endorse what they would like or who they would like to give it to. So not such as a procurement of materials, but procurement of works, like construction works is in which I have dealt with, and I have seen that there has been abuse of the authority and corruption where they give preferential treatment to others. So it is definitely there, and when whoever the other bidders are, when they make like when they put it up to other concerned authorities, then the authorities should take cognizance, but in some again it does not happen. So that's where I feel that the institutionalized does come, because one doesn't take, the next department doesn't take, so there is chances that it would get. So we have to actually nip it in the bud, for it not to get totally institutionalized. And on my part, I mean, I have to say individually that I as a citizen, I have taken a step forward, a bold step forward 5 years ago, when I found that there was differences in procurement, I mean, of works, and that it should not have gone the way it should have been. So in that way there have been also other contractors who have also borne the brunt of people who have used their abused their authority and given it.
I think we'll also need to talk about the larger picture, the connections. Do people really declare conflict of interest when award of contracts or award of any projects, mega projects happen, or any small tendering process that takes place? Do we actually declare conflict of interest? But before we move on, I have a gentleman sitting on my right. He was raring to go that time itself. Please.
In fact, fighting corruption is a collective responsibility, because even if you are not affected today, but you will be definitely affected tomorrow. So my question to the four panels is that how does an institution protect itself against itself? And how does an individual protect itself against itself?
Okay. Meaning, who, for instance, who audits Royal Audit Authority, or who checks Anti-Corruption Commission? Would like to answer this question? Okay, Pemlam, since you are nodding first.
Okay. I think that was a very good question. Who audits who checks who? Institutions. I think with my very little experience, I think institutions like if you look at the Anti-Corruption Commission, who checks these institutions? I feel it's the Bhutanese people. We should check them. And how do we check them is annually they are required to submit a report, and then all their cases, the transparency, like if you go to the website, the number of cases, how they are handling. Every citizen, I feel, should take that responsibility to ask them how they are dealing or what cases they are reviewing. And in regard to the Royal Audit Authority, who audits the audit? Again, the administrative daily routine functioning of use of funds in the Royal Audit Authority, they also have an external audit fielded who will audit the audit in the sense of real monetary auditing. But other than that, it is also, again, I think, because the audit report, the anti-corruption reports, all are submitted to the Parliament, and then it's discussed, and it's also for the public to voice. And now, since I have got this opportunity, I just like to stress a little bit on whether it's institutional corruption or whatever it is. I feel that the more opaque any organization functions, I think the risk of corruption occurring is much higher. The more transparent we are, I think the risk of corruption is less. So therefore, we really need to stress on transparency. Why I say this is, I'd like to take a little bit of cue from what Pusam has just highlighted. If you look at our, currently, I don't mean to criticize anybody, but if you look at the judiciary, the Timkangs, I think what people feel, what people perceive is that, because a judge has to take a decision, Dangpan has to decide in somebody's one or the other, either favor. So therefore, people, because it's so opaque, we are not there to see how the decision has been taken. We feel that, the Dangpan has been biased. Had there been more transparency, had people been involved, like in other places, witness a court hearing or something, and perhaps that will enable people to understand and also minimize corruption if it is there. So I feel that what we need to push for as citizens, as concerned citizens, is push for transparency. Now, Dawa also mentioned conflict of interest. How many are declaring conflict of interest? Because the tender committees, I think, earlier I did submit that more than the system, it's the individuals. So how do these individuals ensure that the conflict of interest is not existing in that law? Yes. And whose responsibility is that? It's the responsibility of all the members sitting there, because Bhutan is so small and we have to take advantage of our smallness, the size being small. We know who is who. So if it is somebody, I think immediately one should be the first one to object if you suspect it is like that. If one keeps quiet and waits for the other person to take the action, I think it is morally wrong. So rather than saying people should do this to curb corruption, why don't we say, start with yourself, I. So Anisum Dubala, so therefore, and then I think all the check and balances, as you're saying, if there's transparency, I think these will come to the, it will be very clear to everybody, and that's how we can monitor also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But are we ready for this kind of transparency? Now, conflict of interest. This is one of the major issues that we all need to consider. Simply because after end of any major events, what we hear is that, for instance, talk about awarding of a project to a construction firm, A or B, and ultimately we tend to hear stories that, okay, the member of this committee is related to this construction firm A. A judge passes a verdict, and ultimately you tend to believe that, okay, if the verdict is passed in favor of the defendant, then people later tend to talk that, judge is related to this defendant. This kind of theories are developing. So the act of declaring conflict of interest is almost non-existent in our society. What do you think, Mr. Kileduji?
The conflict of interest, I think it was not there before. But what I feel today, it's developing. Like, I also sit on some of the committees, some of the committees related to high level on land issues. So there, I find that people declaring themselves, if it is issues related to their relatives or their, friends and families. So therefore, the practice is already coming in, and it's a good sign that such a practice is coming in. On the other hand, it is again is left to the individual, as everybody says. I would like to also talk about transparency related to the Thomde, the city. I think a few years back there was issues related to corruption, people having been jailed, and cases went for some time. So now at the city, what we are trying to do is we are trying to train our staff, let them learn about good practices, let them have the capacity to go with IT and e-governance. I think that's where we are heading: digitization, customer services, transparency, and if these things can go on, what I feel is within the next 2 to 3 years, city, the Thomde can be a very clean place with e-governance, with paperless system in place, with people being trained on the systems. So if we can have this in place, definitely transparency can come and corruption can be minimized to that extent.
Yes. Misuse of public resources. I'm going to come back to Mr. Trupta, but before that, we have another caller online. Hello. Good evening, sir. Hello.
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 Good evening.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Okay. Good evening.
Hello, sir. We can't hear you.
I am Finso from Parola.
Hello, sir. We can't hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm Finso calling from Parola.
Well, I think we'll need to move on. I'm sure we have some technical difficulties here, and people who are watching on screen can hear what the question is all about, but we here sitting in the studio cannot hear what the caller is saying. Anyways, we need to move on. Mr. Dupta, misuse of public resources. What do you think? The only thing that is to some extent done with some degree of transparency is misuse of public resources. And the example that I quoted in our Dzongkha session was misuse of pool vehicles. Lots of discussions in online forums. Yes, Mr. Kilagoji pointed out that to some degree, it should be a form of entitlement for a certain level. But again, the Ministry of Finance actually has a rule in place which forbids the practice. Yet it's happening.
Okay. Misuse of power. I would agree, yes, there is to a certain extent. But before going to that, let me also take this opportunity to share, as a parliamentarian, like one of the callers said, the laws are already in place. As a parliamentarian, our priority is to first come up with the proper legislation. So the laws of the countries become the basis for all the rules, all the regulations, and all this, how the executive will function. So in there, as a parliamentarian, the priority for us is to come up with a proper legislation where every legislation will have a provision so that the implementers get an opportunity to come up and design a proper check and balance system there. For every ministries, for every relevant organizations, we try to come up with the legislation, but not necessarily, we have to only come up with the Anti-Corruption Act.
Let's consider the fact that we have a proper system in place. Perhaps may not be the best, but at least we have a doable system, implementable system in place.
Right.
Talk about individuals. Misuse of public resources, what do you think?
Yes, okay. I agree to a certain extent. Yes, there is misuse of public resources, which is not correct. I definitely do not support misuse of public resources, because for the benefit of an individual, that should not be there. And check and balance system should be designed in such a way that those people who are trying to misuse such public resources should not get any opportunity to do that. So that is what I feel.
But how can you do it? The question or the problem here is that if an individual misuses public property and that individual happens to be a powerful individual, what do we do? Nobody would want to raise their voice.
Yes, very true. So in that case, nobody is above the system actually. Somebody has to go through the system. Somebody has to obey the laws, the rules and regulations. But if we see a particular person who is into, who has authority and power is doing that, and we should be complacent. We should understand that he is going above the system. He is going above the rules, and we should not, tolerate it. We should take action as a concerned citizen. I think we should fight together for that, because for every
Don't you think
individual,
this would take some time?
Of course, but we should not stop it. We should start somewhere else. But doesn't mean that we should stop it. We should work together to stop such people who are misusing their power.
Okay, thank you. One final, we'll take one final call. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Oh. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. So please, we are so sorry for all these technical problems, but if you could introduce yourself and then straight away move on to the topic.
Yes, I'll straight away move on to the topic.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay, my name is Doji.
Please go ahead, sir.
And I'm from Taba.
Move on, sir. Move on. We are waiting for you, sir.
Okay, I have two questions. So number one is to the Kitishikitimis. I'm a retired civil servant, and I've been retired for over 10 years. And now we are talking about absence of institutionalized corruption. So let me get to you straight away. Now, there was so much debate when this 2008 election came about, and after that, now you see how many of our MPs and NCs have a driver. They're already drawing the allowances, but we found that there was no drivers. Is this not an institutionalized corruption? There's a big question that I have.
Number two, sir.
And number two, we have a very eminent lady from the private construction. How many constructions ever get through without corruption?
No, sir.
So these are two things that I have.
No, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
We talk about absence of institutional corruption, but we find that there is institutional corruption.
Mr. Doji, thank you so much for your two straightforward questions. Maybe Amphubsam, you can start the second question first.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Doji, for your question. And I think you agree with what I had said that time, that yes, there is institutional corruption in some institutions, and that is by individuals also who have vested interest. Now, in construction, yes, there is elements of corruption. That's why you will see that there is a lot of news about those corruption in the media, and to try and get rid of that type of corruption, I mean, that's why I had actually taken on this, and I as an individual, as a citizen of Bhutan, and wanting to eradicate such corruption, I took this bold stand, and I also wish that other contractors would come forward, and if they see any element of corruption taking place, they should also tackle it.
Corruption is a two-way process, and to be honest, contractors may not be free of corruption as well, because it's a two-way process. Both the committee and the contractors could be colluding to come up with some form of corruption. So the question here is, any construction, does it really go free of corruption?
Yes, there may be some companies, who would go, but like you said, it's a two-way. But it is many ways, because you have other contractors also who see and watch, And if they feel that there is some corrupt element, they would not keep quiet. So that's why my plea is that if they do see, they should take it up. And especially in construction, I think that is the most talked about, and also the one which is taken up by other contractors as well. Yes. Because if someone else gets the bread, they are deprived of that. So they do actually take it up. And we, from the Construction Association, we also receive a lot of complaints about corrupt practices taking place.
Thank you. Maybe the first question and maybe a summary as well.
I'd like to thank Mr. Dorji. I think he raised two very pertinent issues. And I also would like to say that you have been very observant. And I think concerning the institutionalized corruption in the Parliament, and specifically in regard to the driver allowance for the parliamentarians, I think this Parliament actually regarding the entitlement, we have made a lot of mess. And that too because what happened was, initially when we were discussing the Parliamentary Entitlement Act, everybody was new. This was a new institution totally. And our own requirements, the parliamentarians, okay, driver, vehicle, everything just so happens that people, in a mystical manner, I must confess that. And none of the parliamentarians actually wanted to discuss very openly about entitlement, because they felt that the whole public, the whole country was there to criticize, because the parliamentarians are only talking about their benefits. So in that haste, we had made quite a lot of errors with the Entitlement Act of the parliamentarians. Yes. And that is why a proposal was again made to amend, because now this Entitlement Act, because it has a lot of errors or loopholes or misgivings. So therefore, coming specifically to the driver law, initially I think most of the parliamentarians, and in fact I myself, we hired a driver law, but we were not able to keep them because our Entitlement Act does not allow the driver his DSA. And we are always required to move to the constituencies.
Yes.
So in that respect, none of the drivers wanted to stay just for the allowance that is given as driving allowance. Because you look at the government, the civil service, a driver gets pay plus TA, and our drivers not entitled. So that was one reason, but I think this will be looked into and corrected.
Yes.
Now, just as would you like me to stop?
I think we are really running short of time. Maybe a very straightforward and honest question, at the same time a very honest answer too, because I am of the view that probably you are the first honourable member of Parliament who came in open forum like this, agreeing that the Entitlement Act was messed up by the parliamentarians. On this note, I think we would like to end our program. Wish we could have discussed more on the positive sides as well, rather than just bringing up the negative sides to all this discussion. Anyways, in the interest of time, we will have to stop our discussion here. There are lots of positive things that we also need to take stock of. For instance, as Mr. Kiledoji pointed out, we are the least corrupt country in South Asia. We rank 33rd in international ranking, according to the least corrupt countries ranking. And these are some of the positives that we can take. And are we, because every time we land up talking about corruption, we tend to be a little cynical, and then our viewers tend to believe that, oh, Bhutan has become so corrupt. We have never realized so. Anyways, the message from here is that I keep saying the same, I keep bringing this quote again and again whenever I host any programs on corruption. That is, if all of us clean our own doorsteps, there's no doubt that we are going to have a clean city. Let's all keep this in mind and work towards it. Thank you so much for watching this People's Voice.